everybody, welcome to module number 1. We're going to be talking about the types of control decks that you might see in any given format. The way that I like to classify them is that there are 4 types of control decks. We have your board control decks, your tap-out control decks, your blue control decks, and your combo control decks. So we'll go over each of those in more detail, but just to start out, the tap-out control decks are ones that want to play to the battlefield. These are usually trying to leverage the most powerful spells in whatever format you might be playing up the curve with the intention of trying to dodge the opposing removal that people are playing. For example, if people are good at killing creatures, maybe you want to play planeswalkers, or good at killing planeswalkers, you play enchantments, so on and so forth. The idea is you want to keep gaining card advantage, but also you're much more effective at closing the game. So these control decks tend to play out a little bit more similarly to mid-range decks that you might see, but in the idea of slowly overpowering your opponent. Compare that to a blue counterspell control deck. These are much more your flash decks. These play at instant speed. These hold up their mana the entire time. These are personally my favorite control decks to play, as you gain almost all the information by your opponent making the first move. They spend the mana on their turn, you figure out how you're going to counter it, either with a removal spell or with a counter spell. And in general, I actually think these are the ones that are the easiest to play when people are tapping out on their own turn. Once you get into spots where people are playing instant speed threats, things can get a bit more tricky. That's where the board control decks tend to kick in. The board control decks are much more, my opponent plays to the battlefield, I blow it up. I play a threat that not only is good on its own on the battlefield, but makes additional material or has additional ways to influence the board. This can be killing other permanents, making additional permanents, providing other forms of card advantage while being on the battlefield. Again, similar to the tap-out control decks, these can be more card advantage oriented and go over the top of your opponent, but they're much more effective at dealing with many permanents, unlike the tap-out control decks. These will tend to play more Wrath of God style of cards. And then lastly are the combo control decks. We don't get these very often in sort of your standard style formats. However, once you go into later formats, these are really popular, where you control the game up into a point, you try to disrupt your opponent just long enough to set off a big 1-2 punch, where either you deal a massive blow to your opponent, or in many cases, once you get to formats like Modern and Legacy, you just kill them on the spot. These ones can be entirely explosive, sometimes ban-worthy in their own formats, and I think they're the most exciting, but they're also the most difficult type of control deck to play. Don't worry, we'll get into all of these. We'll cover a lot more on each of these in the future lessons, but those are the 4 types of control decks that we'll be covering.